The minutes of the October 30th board meeting were put in your agenda book. Are there any questions or changes to these minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the October 30th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2 is the nominating committee, and I appreciate my friend Dr. Michael Stanton chairing that committee. Chris Gillum, Lori Griffin, and Chad Hooten served with him. Dr. Stanton, would you like to make that report, or would you rather me do it?
You can go ahead and do it. You want to?
Okay. You can see on the screen that we're recommending that the committee is recommending that Al Brodell be our chair, that the vice chair be Kevin Anderson, the secretary Lori Griffin. The finance committee will be headed by Greg Rebels, the academic committee by Lori Griffin. Any other nominations from the board? From the floor, for the board? Do I hear a motion to approve these recommendations?
So moved. So moved.
Is there a second?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay,
Aye.
thank you. And then agenda item number 3 was the Foundation Supervisory Committee. And Dr. Stanton and his group have recommended that the president be Chad Hooten, the vice president Bill Clary, and the secretary treasurer Andy McNeil. Any questions? If none, can I get a motion to approve this committee?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, Dr. Markham will present the reimbursement of expenses for members of AHECB and ICAC. Dr. Markham, you're on.
Good morning, everyone. So agenda item number 4 is a routine agenda item that allows members of the coordinating board and ICAC to receive expense reimbursements for performing official board duties. Of course, we have had very little travel in the last quarter. However, should that occur, this authorizes the board to receive those reimbursements. So I'm presenting this to the board, this resolution for your consideration.
Do I hear a motion to approve the reimbursement of expenses?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Somebody better second this. Somebody better second this.
Second.
Okay. Anybody, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Our director will now give her report, Dr. Maria Markham. Dr. Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the full report of the activities of my office are located within your board manual. I do have some staffing changes to report. We have welcomed 3 new employees since last we met. Tiffany Donovan has joined us as operational assistant. She has transferred over from the Department of Education, where she served an administrative assisting role. We have added LaShonia Williams as a financial aid administrative specialist. Both of those ladies began in November. LaShonia came to us from Department of Health as a health service specialist too. And then Sarah Ward just began this January. She was previously a student and intern for an Engage Arkansas program, and now she has joined them as a full-time Engage Arkansas communications officer. So we welcome these 3 new employees, filling these spots that have been vacant and rounding out our team. Sadly, we have lost one of our senior leadership staff to the private sector. Ann Clemmer exited the agency early this month. She has taken a role in the private sector She served in higher education, both at institutions and our agency, for over 30 years. So we wish her the best of luck and appreciate her service. I'm sorry that she was not available to say goodbye to everyone today, because she had a great relationship with our board. So congratulations to Ann. We have a couple of institutional leadership changes. At ASU Newport, they have selected a new president, a new chancellor for an institution within their system, Dr. Johnny Moore. He will actually begin in February. So we look forward to working with Dr. Moore. Until that time, Mr. Ike Wheeler is serving as the interim chancellor for ASU Newport. We have worked with Ike for a long time, continue to work with him. He's been very key to the COVID response for that institution. So he is already in a leadership role and will be serving that way for a few more weeks until Johnny gets there. So that was the only change we had with institutional leadership. So I wanted to give you an update on the COVID response. And I think this speaks some to the questions that Kevin Anderson had during the financial conditions report. I wanted to give you an update on, from a high level, on what we're doing to address the pandemic at the department. And then we may, if you have questions specific to an institution, I think we have representation from all of our colleges on the line. The agency has taken on a leadership role to coordinate the immediate responses to the pandemic. So part of that is testing. So higher education has developed a robust COVID testing response. We've used our federal CARES funds that were allocated to our institutions of higher ed to purchase 15 of the Abbott ID PCR machines for our campuses. So those were purchased and placed on campuses around the state to allow them to do rapid tests for symptomatic students. We've also developed a testing partnership with Baptist Health. We also coordinate that, Baptist Health and Department of Health, to provide surveillance testing for student groups, including routine testing for our athletes, as needed for other types of student groups, fraternities and sororities, different activities on campus that put students in close proximity and we require some surveillance. We also use that for gatekeeping type activities for things like when students move back into the dormitory. Some of our institutions have required all students to receive a PCR test before moving back in. So this process that we have developed with Baptist Health allows us to swab students on their campus, courier those swabs to Baptist here in Little Rock, and receive results within 24 to 36 hours. So that has been very critical for timeliness and identifying those students as positives as quickly as possible. We have other third-party contracts with natural state labs to provide testing for our campuses for students and employees. And then our institutions have individual third-party agreements locally when they need to use a local provider, either a local health unit or a doctor's office, a hospital, or some type of clinic to provide responsive testing for students and faculty and staff. So testing is one tier or one tentacle of what we're doing to address the COVID pandemic. Another area that we provide coordination is contact tracing. So our institutions are being served by UAMS. We have a contract with them, and their partnership has been extremely beneficial. We are their only client, so they are only doing contact tracing for institutions of higher ed. We hold a weekly Zoom meeting between the agency, the institutions of higher education, Department of Health, and UAMS to troubleshoot issues with contact tracing. We also discuss vaccines, testing, guidance around quarantine and close contacts. I'm actually on that Zoom right now and this Zoom at the same time. So some of us are doing double duty to make sure that we're addressing issues as they come up. So it's been very beneficial, and we're very excited that we've been allowed to continue that process with UAMS. We certainly have, I think, a more responsive contact tracing experience than the rest of the state. Personal protective equipment We've also coordinated this for our institutions. I spoke with our procurement partners at Department of Health just before this meeting, and almost all of the PPE that we have purchased on behalf of our institutions has been received and is ready for pickup. So I will be helping our institutions coordinate that. In all, our higher ed institutions have now been supplied with $13 million worth of personal protective equipment, and this was all purchased through the federal CARES funds that we received beginning this summer. Vaccinations, that's another area that we are currently providing support to our institutions of higher ed, and that's actually what the contact tracers are talking about right now. So higher ed employees are now receiving their COVID vaccinations. We are working closely with Department of Health and local providers to get vaccines in arms of our people as quickly as possible. As with other vaccine rollouts throughout the state, we're having mixed results. We have a few of our larger institutions that have vaccinated more than 1,000 of their employees. We have other large institutions who are struggling to identify providers. So we have support from Department of Health and now from the National Guard to help connect our institutions with vaccine providers. As of this morning, we have vaccinated approximately 5,500 higher education employees. Mass vaccination events are ongoing, both on our campus and designated locations that are coordinated through pharmacists and hospitals. At the rate that we are going, we anticipate that 100% of our employees in higher education will be vaccinated by the end of February. So we are actively trying to identify vaccines for higher education employees. The last piece that I wanted to mention is the new Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act that was signed on December 27th. So we call that the CRRSAA. It's a very long acronym, but it's basically phase 2 of the Corona relief package. It has funds to provide additional relief and support to our institutions and to our students who are being impacted by the pandemic. So total between the phase 1 CARES Act and now the CRRSAA funds, Arkansas colleges and universities are set to receive, I think a little over, well, this is just this last round, $191 million. That's the CCRSSAA funds, and $58 million of that will be direct payments to students. The rest of that money is used for the institutions to address institutional needs that were caused by the pandemic. CARES funds were very limited in what institutions could use those for. It had to be something that was an obvious and direct result of the pandemic. You could not supplant institutional funds for things that were already budgeted. The new funds give us a lot more latitude to use that to fill holes in payroll and to address things where our budgets have received a shortfall because of reduced enrollments and other revenue streams that have been reduced because of the pandemic. So that is my update on the higher education COVID-19 response. I can take any questions that the board may have in a general, statewide perspective, or if you have questions for institutions, I can ask those individuals to respond.
Any questions for Dr. Markham?
Yes, this is Al. Dr. Markham, as it applies to the PPE, that's great to hear that kind of funding and those supplies given to the schools. Are you getting any feedback from the schools as to whether or not that meets the immediate needs or short-term and long-term needs? And are we getting any feedback from the institutions about future concerns for safety as it applies to social distancing, PPE, checking temperatures or flu-like symptoms as students come back onto campus, stuff like that?
The feedback that I've received so far is that it is meeting the immediate needs. We did have some limitations on what we could purchase with these funds and the things that we could do with them. So there were some things that institutions would have liked to have done to retrofit facilities and replace things that weren't allowable because of the nature the funding stream. But for the most part, I think we have sufficient PPE, at least to last us through the spring. If the pandemic goes longer than that, I mean, we're going to have to make some additional requests for funding. I think that we spent, $13 million goes a long way for sanitizing equipment and masks and those basic things. But, we will have to address some facilities issues, I believe, if this goes long term as far as student housing and the way some of our, other facilities are designed. Those things will have to be addressed. It's not really PPE, it's more, environmental sanitation and safety issues that will have to be addressed.
Any other questions? Any other questions for Dr. Markham? Okay, I certainly appreciate the excellence of Dr. Markham's work. And she's also now going to present us our audit report.
Oh, actually, I have a couple more things, Dr. Carr,
Okay.
on my director's report before we move on to that agenda item. I wanted to give everyone an update on our legislative progress. So the 2021 session is well underway. Working around all the safety protocols has created a very unusual experience for those of us who have spent a lot of time at the Capitol. It's a little surreal walking into the Capitol and following all the protocols, but I think we're getting used to that. The work goes on. Nothing has slowed down. In fact, we may have sped through some of our less controversial items because of the streamlining of some of the processes. The agency has 9 agency bills that were created by agency staff and sponsors agreed to carry for us. One of those has yet to be filed, but the other 8 are making their way through committees now. We've not seen any hesitancy from members to pass these bills so far. 6 of those bills are minor modifications to some of our scholarship programs. We would consider them cleanup and technical corrections. We have one bill that is the financial transparency bill, and this was alluded to during Nick's financial conditions report as well. It was prompted by the financial difficulties at Henderson State University, and it provides the agency with some additional financial transparency data points that we can provide both to the board and to the legislature. So we're going to be increasing the financial oversight. Most of these things are data points that the institutions collect anyway, but we did learn that some institutions were not collecting this. These are things like days cash on hand, accounts receivable, student accounts receivable policies, those types of things. So that bill has passed both committees, House and Senate Education committees, and are now up for floor votes. I think one may have actually passed the Senate floor vote this week and will pass in the House next week, I think, without any issues. But these are transparency bills that will help us to keep a closer eye on the financial conditions of the institutions and not be surprised as we were this last year. The other bill that we have that has not yet been filed, it has completed the drafting process, but the sponsor has not filed it. We just have a couple of other concurrent issues that we are working through that might impact that bill. But it is a needs-based scholarship that would provide significant assistance to students with demonstrated financial need. So I will keep you updated on that as that moves through. We are tracking a number of member bills and working with sponsors to develop additional bills that touch higher education. I would encourage the board to notify me if you have any concerns as the session progresses with either an agency package bill or a member bill as you hear about those in the press. If there's something that causes some concern for you, if you just have questions about a bill, please contact me and I'm happy to either answer a question or represent your concerns to the members as those bills move through. I also wanted to give an update on our regional workforce grants. So since your last meeting, we have awarded from our agency funds a little better than $7 million in regional workforce grants. We distributed or will distribute $2.5 million for computing programs, 3.4 for healthcare, and 1.2 for transportation programs. So these grants are funds that can be used to modernize technology and facilities that train students for careers in those fields. Another round of reviews is planned for this summer. So this is all general revenue that is dedicated to improving, modernizing, and expanding these programs that are in high demand in our state. So I just wanted to make mention of that those funds will start going out in February as institutions start to purchase the equipment and the technology that they applied to receive. And that is my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Markham. Any questions, Dr. Markham, on the director's report?
This is Al. I had one more question over the COVID update, if you don't mind, Dr. Markham. And you may have said it and I may have missed it, but did we receive any feedback from any institution as to the availability of vaccinations for their staff, how that's going, how it's being received by the staff, and are the institutions themselves giving any feedback as to the need still at their institution, or are we leaving that to the individuals within the institution to sign up and we're not tracking it?
No, absolutely. So I'm actually on another Zoom right now with Department of Health, all of our institutions, and the National Guard talking about vaccines. And I think they may have just ended the meeting, but that is a weekly meeting that we have. So as of this morning, we have given out to higher ed employees 5,500 vaccinations for COVID. We think that we will have all higher ed employees vaccinated by the end of the month. And we've had varied levels of success and cooperation across the state, just like every other sector, I think, in coordinating those vaccines. So our institutions are partners with their local providers to organize their vaccination drives. A lot of our institutions are hosting mass vaccination clinics on their campuses. I know A-State has given, I think, over 1,000 vaccines for their employees, but then we have other institutions who are struggling. UCA is having a very hard time getting enough cooperation with their local pharmacies and providers to cover their employees. So the National Guard is helping us at this point identify pharmacies to get the correct number of vaccines into the arms of people on our campus. So some of our institutions are almost completely there as far as their employees. Others are, halfway there. Some have not really even started. So some of the employees of higher ed institutions are going out on their own. They're putting themselves on the Walgreen list and getting it by themselves. Others are relying on their institutions to coordinate these mass vaccination events. And we are trying to provide assistance at this point. So yes, we are getting feedback in real time. I have a document that institutions are going in and they're constantly updating. This is how many vaccines we've asked for. This is how many we've received. We need your help with this. So I think we have a pretty good process worked out, and I think higher ed is moving at a good clip compared to other sectors in vaccinating their employees.
Thank you for that. Working in healthcare myself, I'm in it every day, and I was familiar with what ASU is doing. I just saw on chat that some institutions are doing drive-through clinics. I just want to thank all the institutions for their efforts in that. There it is, UA Fort Smith, I'm sorry. Yeah. Doing drive-through clinics up in the chat. I want to thank each institution for their efforts. It's so important. I see the demand every day from every aspect. And so I just want to encourage the institutions to continue their efforts. And I know it's not easy, but it will pay dividends, I promise. So yeah. Thank you all for your hard work on that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Brodell. And as we've spoken, now I'm up to 5,637 higher ed employees who have had the vaccine. We've identified 14,268 as essential frontline high-risk employees, but we have closer to 30,000 total employees, including student workers and contractors that eventually need to get vaccinated. So we're trying to keep that tally. So far, it seems that our employees at higher ed have been very receptive to receiving the vaccine. We haven't had a lot of opt-outs. We have seen a lot of our students who work in healthcare, not work in healthcare, who are pursuing healthcare professions, like our student nurses, who have declined the vaccine. So we're still, working through. Hopefully, the uptake there will get better as we move through.
Thank you for that.
Other questions for Dr. Markham?
Yes, Dr. Markham, this is Kevin. I guess this ties in with your legislative report, or potentially, I guess it could. I'm referencing back to my earlier comments about the dynamic situation that we find ourselves in, or the universities and colleges find themselves in. And I guess I've got a question as it specifically relates to different programs. I know typically, we take these one at a time, or as they come up, or as they're proposed in terms of adding or taking away. But have we ever done, or do we do a more all-encompassing step back and review of all programs to look at, is there overlap here, or are we not meeting a need there? Do we do anything like that, or have we ever done anything like that?
We are in the process of doing that now. So by the time we meet again, I should have delivered to the board a draft of our next 5-year strategic plan. And that has been a major component of that. We've actually done a supply and demand projection over the next 5 years to look at where we are falling short of providing the workforce that the state currently and will demand. We already have all those numbers, but we just haven't finished the editing of the plan for me to be able to give that to you. Part of that was also identifying the existing programs for those occupations, and we will be strongly supporting the development of programs that address those shortage areas. As far as programs that are over, that we don't need individuals in, that is something that Dr. Walker addresses when we get new program proposals. And it's also something that he addresses when we look at program viability. So do we have a sufficient demand from students to justify keeping those programs on the books? So we do, in the planning process, the 5-year planning process, we look at what our current and prospective demand will be. And then on the look back side, we look at viability as well as, duplications.
So I applaud the efforts on identifying on the needs, or where we need more programs or more support. And I guess, again, back to what I know we're taking these as they come in terms of adding and even taking programs out, deleting. But I guess I would encourage more emphasis on, again, the situation is dynamic and it's changing significantly with declines in the number of potential new students and with technology. I think COVID has kind of given us a look a little bit into the future, because it's accelerated some of that. I mean, it'll pull back some and come back to quote unquote normal. But I think it's given us a little advanced look at that. And I don't know if we have the resources. I guess this is a question. Do we have the resources to do an all-encompassing look at existing programs? And I guess I'm focused on where we're overlapping. I mean, that just has to be happening at an accelerated rate with this dynamic situation. Taking them as they come, I think, fine when the situation is more static. I would even encourage consideration of possibly, because we may not have the resources to do this in your area. It would be a major undertaking. Have we considered even bringing in an outside expert or outside experts that would be easier for them to be objective, that could make some recommendations to our institutions from the outside kind of looking in and saying, hey, this is probably some of the things you need to do if you're going to streamline. And I guess I'd make that recommendation to you and potentially to the legislatures. It'll take some funds to do that. But I think if we're going to be aggressive about streamlining, we've got to get more efficient. And this would help. It'll be a great tool, in my opinion, in that cause, because it's a lot easier to make those decisions if someone gives you the bigger picture. And if I'm going to maybe ramp this program up and dial this one down, if I can see it in an overall bigger picture in relation to my other institutions that I kind of am potentially competing with a little bit, makes it easier to do that. That's just a suggestion.
I think that we have the internal capacity to do some of what you're mentioning, as far as putting together maybe an inventory and identifying some of the overlap, and then also looking at student enrollment in those programs. So I could put that on the agenda for our next board meeting to provide some of that data, and then after we review that, we can move forward with any potential evaluation or study that you think would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Any more questions of Dr. Markham? If not, is it time for the audit report, Dr. Markham? There we go.
All right, so our review of the audit report, we had one finding in our yearly audit report that was based on the subsidiary ledgers for our student financial aid loan programs not balancing with main ledgers. This is a repeat finding that I've mentioned to the board in previous years. To address this, we are moving our contract for a third-party loan servicing or collection servicing company. We're not satisfied with some of the collection success that we have received. We're also updating our record-keeping processes and procedures to correct for some of this. I think most importantly, we are seeking abatement of a lot of the old and doubtful accounts that we have on our books. That's what's caused most of the problems. These loan programs are no longer active, so these accounts and these collections are very old and doubtful. We're having a really hard time with collection. So that should resolve the majority of our deficiencies. So we are addressing that, and we have complied with all of the audit recommendations.
Any questions of Dr. Markham on this? Thank you to our director. We appreciate her very much. Ms. Sonia Hazelwood will now present the annual enrollment report. That's always very interesting. And I think that's on the agenda now. Is that correct?
Yes, Dr. Carr, just a quick, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Yes, I do have an information item for you today. It's the annual enrollment report. First, we're going to take a look at some national enrollment trends from the fall of 20. The National Student Clearinghouse Research Center reported fall of 2020 that in the United States, overall post-secondary enrollments decreased near twice the rate of decline that was reported for the fall of 2019. Undergraduate enrollment decreased the most at 3.6%, including a 13.1% drop in freshman enrollment. The public two-year sector had the sharpest decline at 10.1%, while public four-year colleges had a slight increase of 0.2%. Looking at the public sector as a whole, fall of 2020 enrollment declined by 4% from the fall of 2019. Additional enrollment reports and reporting methods on the Student Clearinghouse Research Center website at nscresearchcenter.org. This is just a screenshot from their website. I kind of wanted to give you context of the enrollment for fall of 20 that some of those percentages were referencing. So you can see the very first two columns that start with the gray headers. That's our fall 2020 enrollment, and then the percent change from the previous year. So that would be a percent change from the fall of 2019. So you can see that the National Student Clearinghouse have 17.7 million students. And as of fall of 2018, post-secondary institutions actively submitting enrollment data to the clearinghouse account for 97% of all enrollments at Title IV degree granting institutions in the United States. Now for some Arkansas numbers. The total unduplicated enrollment for fall of 2020 in all sectors of Arkansas higher education, including our public universities, public colleges, private and independent, and our 2 nursing schools, was 147,339 students. That represents a 1-year decline of 5.6% and a 5-year decline of 10.7%. The following graph provides a 5-year total enrollment trend for each sector of Arkansas higher education. 4-year universities, 2-year colleges, and the private and independent institutions all experienced a decline in enrollment for fall of 2020, while the nursing schools reported. The 4-year public universities reported a fall term decline for the 4th year in a row. They experienced their highest enrollment in fall 16 of 100,413. The 1-year percent change was a decline of 3.7%. After experiencing their first fall term enrollment increase in fall of 19, since fall of 2011, the 2-year public colleges were for fall 2020 of 11.7%. Our private independent colleges for the fall term enrollment, their enrollment has declined the last 5 years. Fall 2020 saw a 2.7% decline compared to last fall term. Now a statewide look at our high school student enrollment. These counts include both concurrent students and our dually enrolled students. Had 3,400 students, and that's a 13% decline from fall of 19. And just an interesting note that 576 of those students, or 3.5% of our high school students, actually enroll in courses at more than one institution. Our undergraduate enrollment reported does not, here in this graph, does not include our high school. So this just pulls out our undergraduate student. Undergraduate's largest decline in 9 years of 5.7%. Our largest undergraduate class on record was 142,442, as shown on the in the orange bar furthest to the left, and that was reported in fall of 11. Here's at least a little positive news for enrollment. Our graduate enrollment for all public and private institutions reported a slight, the largest graduate enrollment on record was just 4 years ago for fall of 16, and that was at 17,671. Our first professional students, enrollment has grown each year of the last 10 years. Enrollment in this level includes students majoring in law, medicine, pharmacy, advanced nursing programs, occupational and physical therapies. And I will note too here is that the most recent decline is the addition of Arkansas of osteopathic medicine in Fort Smith that recently opened and started reporting data to us about several years ago. Now here's some institutional trends, and I did put graphs in the actual agenda book for you, but I wanted y'all to see the actual percent changes from, I did a percent change from fall of 16 to fall of 20, and also the 1-year change going back and looking at fall of 19. This many data points in a table. UAMS, UAPB, and UA Fayetteville were the only public universities reporting a fall 2020 enrollment increase over fall 19. And the U of A Fayetteville actually squeaked into that. They actually had an additional 3 students that were reported over fall of 19. Henderson State and Arkansas Tech reported the highest enrollment declines from fall 19 to fall of 20. UA Fayetteville and UA of Medical Sciences reported an increase in fall 2020 enrollment, looking back to the fall of 16. Now for our high school enrollment trends. Both concurrent and dual enrolled student enrollment is included in this table. Something to note is UAPB began offering courses to high school students in the fall of 2020. And ATU reported the largest high school student enrollment of 2,709. Our undergraduate enrollment trend, we only had 2 public universities, University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences and University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, that reported 1-year increases in their undergrad. SAU Magnolia, UA Fayetteville, and UAMS all reported an increase in undergraduate enrollment if you looked back to the fall of 16. Our graduate student enrollment trends, unlike the undergraduate enrollment, more than half of our public universities saw an increase in graduate student enrollment from fall of 19 to fall of 2020. Professional student enrollment trends. Enrollment in this level includes students majoring in law, medicine, pharmacy, advanced nursing programs, occupational and physical therapies. All 5 public institutions offering first professional programs reported increased first professional enrollment between fall of 19 and fall of 20. For our 2-year colleges, 12 colleges reported a 1-year increase last year. AHECB fall term enrollment from fall 2019 to fall 2020. East Arkansas Community College, Phillips Community College of University of Arkansas, and Southern Arkansas University Tech all reported the highest decreases, which fell between 29% and 31%. Our high school enrollment trends, 6 of the 2-year colleges reported an increase in high school student enrollment over fall of 2019. ASU Three Rivers reported the highest increase in actual number of high school students. And Northwest Arkansas Community College enrolls the largest number of high school students, over 1,900 for fall of 2020. Undergraduate enrollment trends for our 2-year colleges. 1 of our 2-year colleges reported an increased fall of 2020 undergraduate enrollment over fall of 2019, and that was Southern Arkansas University Tech. They had reported an additional 2 students compared to the fall of 19. ASU Three Rivers and East Arkansas Community College reported over fall 2019. ASU Mid-South and ASU Three Rivers reported the largest % declines comparing back to the fall of 16. And enrollment data for Northwest Technical Institute will be included in next year's annual enrollment report, as we'll have a couple of years of data in which to provide some % changes. For our private and independent institutions, our Baptist Health Nursing School reported an 8%, while Jefferson School of Nursing reported a decline. Arkansas Colleges of Health Education in Fort Smith is showing steady growth in its first 4 years. And Williams Baptist University reported a almost 11% fall 2020 enrollment increase over the fall 2019. Does anybody have any questions on the annual enrollment report?
Thank you so much, Ms. Hazelwood. That's always a great report. Any questions for her?
Thank you.
Okay, if not, Mrs. Alana Bowles is going to present the annual report on institutional certification. I think you may be muted. Ms. Bowles, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, sorry. The Institutional Certification Advisory Committee is set up by Arkansas law, and the members are appointed by the director of ADHE. This committee looks at institutions outside of Arkansas and some private institutions in Arkansas. There are some institutions that are exempt from this oversight, institutions in a reciprocity agreement, such as the State Authorization and Reciprocity Agreement, or institutions offering only church-related training, or institutions that are on military installations. For this past year, there are 40 institutions that fall under these rules. There are 16 Arkansas campuses, and there are this is the breakdown of the institutions, how they offer their programs. Some are just distance delivery, some are just on campus, and some are both. The types of the degrees that are offered by these institutions, there are 219 undergraduate degrees and 284 graduate degrees, for a total of 503 total degrees offered by these institutions. Student enrollment, there are about 7,500 students that are enrolled in these type of programs at these institutions. We've had about 1,500 graduates, and you can see the breakdown for the Arkansas enrollment versus the online enrollment there. And the graduates, this lists the breakdown of the graduates in the types of degrees. Like I said, we had about 1,500 graduates, and the majority of those programs are associate's degrees and certificates. The certificates are both the graduate level and the undergraduate level. As far as the institutions that are exempt from this oversight by the ICAC, there's 29 institutions that offer only church-related training, and so they have an exemption. There are 3 institutions that are on military installations, and then there are the out-of-state institutions that are in the reciprocity agreements, which is the majority of institutions offering this type of these type of programs to students are in reciprocity agreements. So, the main agreement is the SARA, the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. This is voluntary for all institutions. We have 34 Arkansas institutions that are in SARA, and states also have to join SARA. Arkansas's membership is up in June, and so we will be applying for renewal for our membership. And there are about 2,000 institutions nationwide that have joined SARA. So, are there any questions?
Any questions of Mrs. Bowles? Ms. Bowles, thank you very much. Appreciate that report.
You're welcome.
At this time, we will hear a report of the Finance Committee, and that'll be Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carr. The Finance Committee recommends the approval of agenda items 11 through 13.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That report is approved. Ms. Griffin, the academic committee.
The academic committee has reviewed items 21 and 22, and we recommend the approval of agenda items 14 through 20.
Can I get a motion for that to be approved?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Any opposite? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposition? Thank you both, to Mr. Anderson and Ms. Griffin. At our October 30th meeting, we asked the staff to put together a resolution thanking Dr. Olin Cook for his service. They've done that, and I'm going to ask Dr. Markham if she would to read that for us. Dr. Markham?
Thank you, Dr. Carr. So I don't believe that Dr. Cook has joined us today, but I would like to read the resolution in appreciation of his service to the Higher Education Coordinating Board. So whereas Dr. Cook joined the Arkansas Higher Education Coordinating Board in 2008 and has advanced the mission and agenda of the board through his 12 years of service and steadfast advocacy and commitment. And whereas Dr. Cook displayed able leadership as chair of the coordinating board from 2012 to 2013, and whereas during his term of service, the Arkansas Higher Education Coordinating Board approved the implementation of the Arkansas Common Course Numbering System, as well as approved numerous policy amendments. And whereas Dr. Cook's contributions as an intelligent, hardworking, dedicated, and consistent source of advice are unparalleled and will be greatly missed by the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And whereas Dr. Cook's tireless efforts to engage presidents, chancellors, students, faculty, staff, families, business leaders, elected officials, and countless others set a high standard for action, now therefore be it resolved that the Arkansas Higher Education Coordinating Board and the Division of Higher Education highly commend and thank Dr. Olin Cook for his leadership, vision, and for the example he has set in higher education in Arkansas. Be it further resolved that this statement of appreciation be conveyed to Dr. Olin Cook with a copy to be included in the official minutes of the January 29th, 2021 meeting of the Coordinating Board.
Thank you so much, Dr. Markham. Dr. Cook has been a fixture in higher education for many years in Arkansas. I first met him years ago when I was on the staff at Florida State University, and he has been a great supporter of higher ed in the state. We appreciate him and we'll miss him. I asked Dr. Markham if she would develop some certificates for our members, and she did. She and her team did a beautiful job. And so I hope you got yours already in the mail. And we appreciate so much each of you for your work. This is something we hope that you'll hang in your office. Thank you for your commitment to higher education. We will now open the floor to any public comments from our presidents or chancellors, if they would identify themselves. And following their comment, I'd like to make a few short comments before I ask Mr. Brodell, as our incoming chairman, to adjourn the meeting. First of all, though, any presidents or chancellors, would you like to make a comment? And if so, please let us know who you are and where you're from. Not hearing anybody. One more chance. Anybody would like to say something? Well, I would like to make just a comment that, as I lead the chair of this board, and let you listen. And if you have any comments, I say you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll ask Mr. Brodell to close the meeting in just a moment. It's been a distinct pleasure to serve as your chair for the last 2 years. Let me assure you that the staff of the Department of Higher Education is excellent. Dr. Markham has done a fine job of assembling an incredible group of professionals. Mr. Brodell, you have an excellent group in this coordinating board staff. No doubt you will serve as chair and do it well. Each of these board members serves as volunteers. Mark Twain penned the words to describe the essence of volunteerism when he said, "Volunteers are unpaid not because they're worthless, but because they're priceless." Thank you to our board. This has been a challenging year for every one of us. Most of our meetings in 2020 were on Zoom, and our campus colleagues joined us on these Zoom meetings. I would like to leave you with just a few final thoughts and challenges as I depart the role of chair. 3 issues that I believe will remain front and center for those of us in higher education. First is the issue of accessibility. In the year 2021, there are very few careers that don't require some credential beyond high school. For that reason, we measure the number of credentials that the state issues each year, and that number has been consistently growing, but not fast enough. We still have many fellow citizens who lack the preparation to be successful in this very competitive world. All of us must do a better job of promoting the terrific options in our higher ed system beyond high school. Secondly, an Arkansas state leader once told me that the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. Our post-secondary higher education system is excellent, but we need to move from excellence to eminence. 2 years ago, I mentioned that I hoped we could become recognized among the best of the best. And I mentioned 2 states, North Carolina and Virginia. We're making progress, but we must never become complacent. I want our state to be recognized for excellence in every program we offer. If you want a certificate program, a 2-year program, a bachelor's program, or a graduate program, whatever preparation you need, you can't get a better program anywhere than we have right here in this state. Finally, a friend sent me an article recently about great places to retire. Arkansas was not in that list. It was not in that list because this article said that we had the 6th highest crime rate in America. I have been disturbed because in recent years, in recent months, you read about the apparent values deficit among a few of our people. Too many well-trained people stealing from their companies, classroom teachers abusing their students, professionals overcharging a government program or a fellow citizen. Reminds me of a quote by the great secondary educator John Phillips. Goodness without knowledge is weak and feeble. Knowledge without goodness is dangerous, and that both united form the noblest character and lay the surest foundation of usefulness for mankind. Or to quote Winston Churchill, without integrity, nothing else matters. With integrity, nothing else matters. We want the students who we train in this state to have proven preparation in their field, lifetime intellectual curiosity, and tenacity, combined with decency and good character. We say in my hometown of Searcy that we're a place where thousands live like millions wish they could. I want to take that a step further. I want Arkansas to be a state where 3 million live like 300 million wish they could. Thanks so much to each of you on our campuses who serve the incredible students of this state. I speak for each member of this board when I say you are appreciated. God bless you and thank you. Chairman Brodell, it's all yours.
Dr. Carr, I've actually dreaded this day for a couple of years. Who wants to be the guy to follow Dr. Carr? I see our chat is lighting up with thank you, note after note to Dr. Carr for his service, not just to this board, but to higher education and the state of Arkansas. We appreciate you for your service. We appreciate you for your leadership. And I personally thank you. One of my very first meetings, I found my chair right next to you. And as a new member of the board, I was kind of looking around wondering, what am I doing here? And Dr. Carr, you helped walk me through that and so many things since then. So personally, from me to you, I want to thank you, but on behalf of the board, on behalf of education in Arkansas and all the communities that you've helped, thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for setting such a great example here for our coordinating board. I know that I will strive and fail to live up to the standard that you have set, but I appreciate you for all you do. Just thanks again. We really, really appreciate you and your service.
Thank you very much.
Any other business to be brought before this board before we adjourn? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you all for your time today. I look forward to working with each of you in the future. And with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you all.